Hi guys, and welcome to another Brushmaster video. We've got this fantastic model we're painting today, and his name is Grog Ardnog, the Ogre Veteran. He's from Victoria Miniatures, and he is part of an ongoing Kickstarter she's got going right now, which is called Space Aussies 2, which is really good. It's packed full of fantastic models in both cast resin models and STLs, so get over and check that out. Now, as you can see today, I'm trying some new Vallejo colours for the skin, which I think work really well. I really have been impressed with these few Vallejo colours I've got. Very smooth, they've got really nice flow and really good coverage, so yeah, I'm really enjoying using those. For this skin, I used them throughout, and I really enjoyed using them. So the usual things here, we're painting the highlights on the face at the moment, and as you can see, we're painting all the areas that are really pointing upwards or sticky outy, as Vince would say. So we're building these up quite strong, so we're taking quite a big jump with this first tone. And trying to get a lot of definition in the face and all the other parts of the skin. Now here I've mixed up a little in-between tone, which is my sort of blending method for this portion of the skin. So between the base coat and the first highlight, I actually mixed a tone in between those, slightly thinned down, and I've just gone roughly round and just feathered out where I can see sort of harsher brush marks. You can see it on the cheek there where I've really smoothed it out. And this is after the first layer of highlight and blending, looking at the entire model. And I think it looked pretty good right now. I'm pretty pleased with where all the highlights were. So using Anthea skin now, just pure out of as it came, nothing mixed in with this. I'm coming in and painting probably the strongest highlights on the face, and as you can see here, I'm focusing on just little smaller areas that are really sticking out, like you can see on the outer edge of his cheek there, the top of the nose part there, and really getting these to have a nice bright sharp highlight. We're really trying to create contrast here with this skin, and we're only going to do that at the moment by getting these brighter tones in. Now we will create more contrast by shadowing later, but now for the final highlight, where I've gone back to adding in a little bit of sunny skin tone from AK Interactive, which is my usual paint of choice. I really like their paints. So we're just trying to get that bright sort of yellowish tone now. As you can see, I'm painting quite small areas now. I'm really just focusing on very small highlights in the uppermost areas, and where it's going to give the most sort of bang for buck where I put them. I want to be able to look at this model and see the features and see the detail, and we're going to get this with these really bright highlights. Now once we've got past this stage, I think this is an important part of the paint job here. So I've taken Anthea skin here and I've watered it right down, diluted it down, and I go over like 3 or 4 passes, and I'm just going over the whole area with this glaze. And we're trying to sort of homogenize the colors a bit by bringing the lighter tones closer to the mid-tones. I'm not really glazing into the shadowy areas, but what this will do, this is just going to smooth everything out and give us a nice finish on this skin. Now to finish this skin off, I've wanted to put a bit more colour back in, so I've gone back to that Vallejo Scarlet Red, and I've thinned this right down again, just like the last mix we did. This is very sort of dilute, And as you can see, I'm putting this on, just pushing into these shadow areas. I put some around the lips and all over the nose to try and give him a little bit of more of a rosy nose and a bit more colour. And this really helps to bring the skin to life. You know, once I'd put on all the main highlights and all that, there was a sort of little bit of a flatness all over with the skin. And I even come here with, I go a real sort of bright poppy red here, which is blood red. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to create some visual interest. And like I say, putting a little bit more life into this skin by adding these redder tones as very thin glazes. Right, so now that the face is done and all the skin's done, we're going to do some of the features. So the first thing up is these lovely big teeth that he's got. And I'm using as a base coat reddish grey. Now there's already the undertone of the sort of the scarlet red and the blood red that I've put around the mouth as glazes and the initial colour. So we've got a nice base tone there. So we're using this reddish grey from AK. And we're painting most of these, 90% of these teeth we're painting. So the next tone is I come in with warm grey, and we're painting like little lines on these teeth to make them look like, you know, there is some sort of shape and texture to all these teeth. All the middle teeth are very small, so I'm trying with a very thin brush here to get these little lines and the tops of these teeth painted. Now it's important when we do these teeth to make sure that we leave some of the darker colour showing. Now the last part of the teeth here was coming in with pure ivory, just to get the very tips of the teeth and the very tops of them, just to create that contrast and make them stand out against the mouth, which is the backdrop to them. For the clothing and the cloth parts, I've decided to base them all over with the same colour. And this is dark green from AK Interactive. And I want to do the two main pieces of cloth, which is his trousers and then his shirt. I wanted to do them in just two different greens. So for the pants or trousers, I wanted to get quite a sort of a whitish desaturated green here, and I love this colour from AK Interactive. It's a really nice sort of military colour, which I thought would work really well here. Putting on this sort of mid-tone now, or our first light, I'm trying to focus most of the painting in the top parts looking up, and getting a nice highlight spot. So I've then added in alga green, which is another great colour from AK. And as you can see here, we're painting much smaller areas now. We're really trying to focus the light on the tops of the folds, on the top parts of the thigh only. So I'm not painting too far round the thighs. I'm keeping it right in the middle there. And for the shirt, we're going to actually start with the main mid-tone colour of alga green. Now this is a more yellowy green, this green, so it's very different from the gunship green we put on earlier. So what I'm trying to do here is use the same base colour, but we're going to go in different directions with the mid-tones and the highlights to create a sort of visual contrast between a very desaturated green and then a very sort of saturated yellowy green, which it makes the cloths appear as two completely different elements. Even though we've started from the same green, we can still do that. And these yellow tones work really nice as well. You know, on the upper part of the model, it helps to push the light upwards and towards the sort of focal point of the model, which we want it to be. So now we're going to go on to painting this. He's got this big sort of metal panel all around his sort of abdomen. And I decided to try and do it in sort of like a greeny brass sort of colour. So the brass sort of mixture I usually use is these colours, which is chocolate, and Japanese brown from AK, which is like, they're really great colours. It works really well. And for the main highlight here, I'm coming in with pure Japanese brown, just painting the sort of what we'd call the shine spots, or where the light is catching most of all. Now this really sort of works better if you can leave plenty of the darker colour showing. So we need that extreme contrast with any sort of metallics. And at the end here, I'm adding an old favourite, which is pale yellow, one of my real go-to colours for highlighting. And as you can see, we paint very small areas now, tiny little parts, where we want the sort of the emphasis of the metal, the shiny spots that we want to stand out, what way we paint them. And I think at the end here, yeah, I come in with pure pale yellow. And this really is just edges and little dots, little tiny parts, which gives us that really nice shine effect on this metal plate. Next up is all the leather parts, and there's quite a lot of sort of belts and sashes and things like that, which I'm painting all in leather here. So again, I'm using the Vallejo colour Gorgon brown here, which is a really nice brown. Reminded me a little bit of sort of a saddle brown or Rhinox hide almost when I first started using it, but then it dried sort of quite a sort of pale brown here, which is quite nice. So medium rust and light orange here. We start the highlighting on these all these leather parts. He's also got all those little sort of satchel bag things around his waist, 6 of them in total. They were a bit of a pain to paint all those, but I think they look really quite good when they come out. And for the final highlight, I've come in with sort of a neat orange brown here, and we just painting those very small crisp orangey highlights, which will give us that really sort of nice leather look. Now I sort of paint a few little lines and jags as well in some parts to give a little bit of texture. Now when I'd painted all this, one of the things I sort of stood back and looked at it, and I thought it sort of doesn't look quite contrasted enough. It was a little bit flat in a few areas. And I really felt there was something missing, so I pulled out my King Purple with the original base coat, and I've watered this right down, and I just run this as a little glaze into the deepest shadow areas, just to push the darkest shadows to that little bit of a purple tone. So we're painting the big skull in his middle, hanging from this big necklace he's got. He's got all these bones sort of hanging around his neck as well. And this is a sort of recipe I quite like using, which I've found lately, which is tan earth and buff from AK Interactive. And I'm painting straight over the black here. There's no sort of undercolour. And I just pick out all the details of the bones with that colour. Now the main highlight here is pure buff, which is my sort of go-to colour for bones, skulls and things like that. It's a colour I love using. And it's important here to sort of really build up, you know, all the bits that are facing up and all the bits that stand out. Now for the hair, in the sort of box art, he has sort of a grey mop of hair, and I sort of didn't really want to do that. I wanted to go more of a sort of yellowy brown colour. So I'm starting off here with a colour from AK called Afro Shadow, which is a really great sort of red brown. It's got a lovely tone to it, and it's quite a strong colour as well. And for the highlight, I'm coming in for the mid-tone, I'd say, with dark brown. Now one of the things that's difficult with hair like this is it's not a sculpted flowing hair, it's all like little stubbly dots, so I'm painting it in the same way. I'm really sort of stippling this colour with the first mid-tone sort of really concentrating on the top and the front of this sort of mop of hair. Now I add some orange brown to this now, and as you can see, I just start moving that highlight further and further up and further forward. So where the back of the hair is now, I'm sort of more sparse with the stippling to make it sort of fade out towards the back of the hair. And what this gives us a nice sort of focal point and pushes the highlight to the front, you know, and gives us a little bit of contrast in the hair, which is difficult with like stubbly hair like this to actually get any contrast. So this is the only way I found I can do it, is just by pushing the light to the front and building up a sort of nice highlight, you know, at the top of his forehead there, which is going to have the most impact. So we're on to the boots now. As you can see, I'd sort of gone round and painted a lot of elements black, and for the boots here I'm just going to leave the black as my shadow colour, as my deepest colour. Chocolate is fantastic colour from AK. I use it an awful lot with things. A really sort of desaturated, you know, sort of middle flat brown, and it works really well. Now for the first highlight, I've added in tan earth here, and we're just picking out a sort of a strip of light sort of on the back here, and all the little folds, we want to emphasize those so that they stand out, and obviously around the sole. And we'll be also picking out all the parts on the top of the boots at the front, so that there's some little sort of folds, wrinkles, and there's a little strap at the side there, which we managed to pull out. Now for all the metal parts, we're going to do a little bit of NMM here. This sort of dark green blue colour here is a new colour I got recently that I'm really enjoying using for sort of steel and metallics. It works really well for that sort of first sort of mid-tone colour. You know, it's just the right sort of tone and shade for doing steel, I find. You know, it's a really versatile colour, and I'm using sort of quite a sketchy, scratchy sort of application here. So you quite often find steel is quite often what we call brushed steel, which has got a lot of lines in it. So I'm trying to sort of replicate that in a lot of areas. So I'm doing a lot of sort of very thin lines on a lot of areas to sort of try and replicate that. Now for the first main light, I've come in with blue-grey, and again I'm just painting the highlights sort of inside of the areas I've already painted. And as you can see here with NMM, one of the real keys is we've got to jump up to bright values as soon as we can to sort of, we're trying to simulate shine, little shine spots in the metal, and the way we do that is by jumping up to very light colours very quickly. So when we paint a lot of elements, like I did with the green shirt and the green pants, you know, it's a gradual rise in value. But with NMM, we try to make those jumps much quicker, and then make the highlights much smaller and brighter, so that we get that sort of shiny effect. The last step here was I mixed up a glaze of the in-between colours, and I've sort of gone over and over a few times, really trying to smooth the transitions out that I'd made. There was a couple of rough bits, you know, nothing too bad, but some thin glazes really seems to sort of smooth things out and tidy things up. Now I wanted to put a little bit more of the shadow areas in here, so this is a very thin down black. As you can see, it leaves hardly any marks, and I just wanted to push from the sort of edge of the mid-tone back into the black shadows and smooth that out, and just emphasize those shadow areas a bit more. And as you can see here on this pad, a lot of the first sort of mid-tone left a lot of little brush strokes, you know, sort of hanging in mid-air on their own. So for this sort of goldy brassy areas on the gun, I've got another Vallejo colour here, which is English uniform, which again is a really good versatile colour, works really well for gold. I've seen a lot of tutorials online of people using this, so When I saw this in the store recently, I was sort of drawn to it. I thought, well, yeah, I've got to try that because it's different from the sort of gold and brassy colours I normally use, but I'm sort of glad I bought it. I really like it. And this is another one that I bought at the same time, which is Scrofulous Brown. I've seen quite a few people using this as well. A really gorgeous sort of greeny, browny, yellowy colour, but really good for sort of golds and brass. And again, we're just trying to paint the sort of minimal highlights on this gun. Sorry if I'm a little bit out of shot there, a little bit out of focus. But yeah, trying to see it here, I'm putting very thin lines on. And again, my go-to colour, which is pale yellow, I've just added a little bit of that in, and we're sort of painting that really on the edges and the corners, just to give that sort of simulation of where light would catch, you know, on a metallic surface, which is nearly always on the edges, the upraised surfaces, but they've got to be very small, because you know that's how we get that shine effect on these metallic objects. So the last part of this was the base, and as you can see, I'd sort of printed off this base that I put together in ZBrush, and I had a bunch of colours on my wet palette just before I was going to change it. So I just made a load of mixes, so I can't even tell you what the colours were. I know there was black, I think a dark brown, and that sort of greeny blue colour we use for the armour. But I mixed other colours in and just kept mixing till I got something I like. So the first highlights all over this stonework is dark green grey. Now this is a colour I love using for rocks and stones and things. I think it's got a really nice, interesting tone, and it gives a sort of that sort of greeny grey feel that you know I quite like seeing on the models I paint. And I really love painting this sort of fallen statue like this, because we can make it look sort of quite old and debilitated, fallen apart, that's the word. So I come straight in here with blue grey, added in with a little bit of the dark green grey, just to sort of sketch in those first highlights. And I paint this very sketchily. I don't really try and make this too neat and tidy, because you know it's not something that would be neat and tidy. This is a fallen statue. It's going to be, you know, in a war zone, it's been beaten up, so it would look very rough. So I'm trying to simulate that look with my brush strokes, and where I'm sort of placing highlights, shadows, you know, trying to make it look sort of quite rough and sort of beaten up. And this is a good way to do it. Like, you know, we can pull the colours in later, but we want to get that very sketchily look all over this. So the last highlight here is blue grey on its own, and I'm really, as you can see, I'm only painting very small parts, very bits that I just want to emphasize, that are looking up, you know, corners of the book, you know, the corners, the edges of the robe, the hat, you know, all the little top facing areas where I want there just to be a little bit more light and a little bit more focus. As you can see, it's starting to look quite sort of whitish now, and you know, I felt like maybe I'd pushed that sort of whiter tone a little bit too far by the end, but I was really happy with the sort of the detail you could see, the definition. And to finish it off, I've mixed up a glaze of those two colours that I used previously, and I literally just glaze over everything here. It's sort of like quite a heavy glaze, I would have said, and it just helps to smooth everything out and tidy it up. So as we come to the end now, guys, I just want to say thank you for watching, thank you for supporting me as you have done, and go and check out Victoria Lamb's Kickstarter, some lovely models on there.